All right. Oh, okay. So I want you guys to go in the head and pretend you're Jamar Chase for a moment. Just lock in on him. It's Sunday and it's game time. You just go into the huddle, and all of a sudden, in this case, Browning, he's in the huddle. He's calling the plays. He's putting his hands over his ears so he can hear the play call. And he all of a sudden goes to the huddle. He goes, "All right, guys, I need trips right, X nasty." Gun trips right, X nasty. That's the formation that he's calling for that play. And then the play he calls is motion spot wide corner. And then after that, usually they'll check to a run play just in case. They'll go, all right, duo 26, just like that. Two plays. Sometimes they call more, but you know what? For this example, we'll just go two plays in the huddle. They call, one pass and, of course, one run in case they need to kill the play. And, of course, you're Jamar Chase, right? You're on the X. So if it's trips X nasty, you are the solo receiver on the other side of the field. So if there's trips on the right, then, of course, there's one solo receiver on the left. And, Jamar Chase, he's the X. So guess what? He's on the left side of the field. And he's running a seam route on this play, right? The other side, they're running a flood concept with the running back going in motion. And Jamar Chase, Jamar Chase, you were running a seam streak down the sideline. So you line up on the line of scrimmage, and you're looking at the defense, and you see, okay, they're stacking the box right now. You got one-on-one on the corner in front of you. You're thinking, oh, this is go time right here. This is it for me, right? I'm beating him on that streak. You think anybody's stopping me on a fade route? No, there's no corner in the league that's stopping me on the fade route. So, all right, Hikers gets called. You hit him with the he's trying to press you on the line of scrimmage. You can't let him disrespect you on the line of scrimmage like that. He tries to press you, give him a little shimmy shake. Boom, you speed right past him. And after that, you just accelerate down the field. No one's catching you. You throw up the mailbox. You say, hey, give me the ball. Throw it right here. I'm open. And you turn around to try to track the ball because you know it's in the air. You try to turn around, you track it, you're looking for it. It's not there. You can't find it. You look at the quarterback, the whistle's being blown, and he's sacked. And you know what? You just wasted your time. Not necessarily wasted your time, but you sat there, elevated yourself. We're open. You didn't get the ball. You go back in the huddle. And second down after that, second and long. You call it in a, quarterback, same thing. He goes, all right, you know what? I like the look on that. We're going to stay in a gun formation, but this time we're going to go in gun tight, Y off. And of course, that's a little bit more of a compressed set. And, they sit there and they're like, all right, you know what? Let's run a flood drive and play action flood drive for that matter. And then, of course, they'll call a trap as a run. Line scrimmage, you know what? Same thing. You give him the guy a little shimmy, boom, you're open. You turn around, try to track the ball, try to find it, try to get open, get that first down. And he checked it down to the running back. You were open, but he checked it down to the running back. That's Browning for you. And of course, you know what? He turned a second and long to a third and still long. It's still like 3rd and 15. So what? They run a screen, turnover or a punt, and you're sitting on the sideline going, what happened? I was open 3 plays in a row. Why didn't I get the ball? I mean, because you need the ball in your hands, because how else are you going to go down the field and just pretend that, you know what, you're putting the team on your back, though, with a broken leg, and then all of a sudden you're at the goal line with Shannon Sharper or Darren Sharper, the hardest hitting safety in the league, but it doesn't matter. You put the team on your back, though, because you are Jamar Chase. Now, of course, that's to sit there in the scenario that we went through, but that consistently kept happening throughout the weekend, week 3. And we're going to be talking about that today, but not necessarily specifically for Jamar Chase, but for every player that is currently underwhelming. And what is going on, guys? It is your boy Nader of 32-Bit. We are back, and we're going to be talking about a lot of the trades, buy low, sell high situations. What's going on here? Because there's a lot of players that are clearly not playing to their expected values. And the problem with that is, what were you expecting? Is the mean way I should say it, because you know what, throughout the offseason, I've been harping specifically for rookies on the dynasty draft, but more so the players during draft season, specifically redraft season when we were doing mock drafts. I try to tell people, and I get in a lot of debates over this because I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's the fact that I always tell people to never draft players specifically off talent alone. You draft players based off the situation that they are in, and solely off the situation that are in. Like, do you have a specific way to be able to be fantasy productive? Is there a path to success on your team? Is the scheme fit your talents to elevate yourself to become fantasy football productive? And a lot of the times, no, that is not the case. You are not in a proper situation to be fantasy football productive. And because of that, you still draft a player and you scratch your forehead, wonder why in frustration, what happened? What went wrong? Why is my fantasy team trash? Even though you don't even have injuries. Realistically, there aren't too many injuries that make you go, oh man, my fantasy team got ruined from injuries. Yes, I know right now CD Lamb is a little hurt, Mike Evans hurt, James Conner unfortunately is out for the year. But realistically, other than that, you should be doing all right in the injury category. It should be specifically players underwhelming in this case. And of course, I am solo today, just like my love life. We are going solo, and you're just going to hear me monologue and yap and talk fantasy football for a straight 45 minutes. Hope you guys enjoy it. But to keep on going on the situation at hand here, you have to have a scheme that fits the talent personnel. And realistically, talent isn't necessarily as important because you are in the NFL. At that point, you are the upper echelon of the athletes that pretty much the world has to offer at this point. Other than, I would say, like some soccer has some athletes, but those are just athletical athletes with their legs and sort, not necessarily the physical athletes. Of course, the upper body, lower body, mind, and all that good stuff that can provide and pull a scheme for you to be able to win your fantasy week. Now, as I was saying, realistically, I keep it as a formula. Only about 15% of the player's talent gets weighed into it when I am picking somebody in a redraft league or starts and sits and all that good stuff. It is, in my opinion, at least 80% scheme when you are evaluating a player. The other little bit is the division that they're in. Are they in a good division? Is the schedule difficult? Do they have a really bad bye week? How's their playoff schedule going? And are they actually competing this year? Where, you know what? They might not just sit their starters at the end of the year, or you know what? Maybe they're going to be too good at the end of the year where they're going to sit their starters during my fantasy championship. But of course, you don't necessarily think about that so early in the year. But as I was saying, you know what? It is entirely scheme fit on whether a player is fantasy productive. And when I say scheme fit, it's an umbrella statement. You know what? To be more specific, is the coach competent? Does the coach put the players in a position to succeed? First, it has to be a yes. If that's not a yes, then you know what? It doesn't really matter what kind of player they're not going to succeed. Or if they're just a generational talent, like even Saquon Barkley, we were thinking, oh, he's kind of fallen off a little bit before he joined the Eagles. Like everybody knew he was talented, but he was still drafted in the third, fourth ADP rounds when he was on the late tenure of the Giants. Because one, he was getting hurt a decent amount of times. He did come off, I believe, an ACL tear. And of course, the talent was just not there on the team. The scheme wasn't there. The coaching staff wasn't there. The quarterback wasn't there. The offensive, everything. And of course, if the head coach isn't there or competent enough to provide a proper scheme for the offense, then of course, you know what? Players are just not going to be fantasy productive. There's a reason why teams like the Jets or the Jaguars just never have competent offenses where they have fantasy production. We had a year of ETN. Congratulations. He's doing good right now. Hopefully he can continue that throughout the year. But realistically, other than in those offenses, there's not really a sit there and a start and forget type of player. But of course, okay, say you do have a competent head coach. Now, okay, is the offensive line competent? Is it good? Is it going to protect the quarterback for him to be able to make the proper reads down the field? Is the offensive line competent for the running back to be able to pass and surpass the second level to get those chunk yards, to get those fantasy points? Okay, offensive line's good. How is the quarterback doing? Is the quarterback competent? Can the quarterback throw it to the wide receivers? Can he make his first, second, third read progressions? Okay, can he move around in the pocket? All right, can he extend the play and make something happen with his legs to either throw it to the wide receiver or get those rushing yards? Okay, now what about the wide receivers? Then we look at the wide receivers to sit there and say, all right, are they able to get separation in man defense? Okay, can they run proper routes in zone? Do they have an understanding of the offense? And usually that one is kind of the last on the list of the priorities when you're taking a wide receiver, because at some point in the NFL, they are able to get their zone reads down for them to be able to sit in the soft spot of the zones, to be able to handle all that, and then get yourself some receptions and fantasy points. But that is what I mean specifically when I'm talking about scheme fit for a player, that umbrella statement of what is the situation around him. in order to elevate himself to become fantasy football productive. And right now, we are seeing the perfect example in Jamar Chase. Now, of course, he went against the Vikings, Florida's defense, and that is no joke of a defense. It is gnarly defense. We saw it last year, and we're seeing a continuation of it this year, and it might be even better this year. They might have better personnel to be able to elevate that scheme. We're just going to see how it goes, just like the Browns. The Browns this year, they have a crazy defense because not only do they have phenomenal pass rush and Myles Garrett, but they got that secondary scheme that can really clamp down wide receivers and, of course, those route combinations that they like to throw at them. We saw it with the Green Bay Packers. They were absolutely clamped down to the point where, hey, you know what? They had one of the upsets of the year, as we say, to knock off their undefeated streak. And you know what? I was thinking to myself, hey, unless they throw the games themselves, I don't see a team beating them. And then, you know what? Maybe it was just a September champs type of thing. But you know what? They were beaten down pretty quickly in itself. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of players that, of course, are underperforming. And we're going to be talking about the trade value for them, whether you want to buy low or some players you want to sell high, or players you're going to have to keep and hold because, I mean, realistically, their value, you're not going to get anywhere near the return. It's like, you know what, when you buy a new car, you take it off the lot, it loses half its value. This is going to be the same case, half of its value or more when it comes to these receivers or players or running backs and all that sort that aren't giving you the return of the ADP that you specifically drafted them. Like, for example, Ladd McConkey. We did draft him at a third round ADP. He's not giving you third round ADP specifically for the sole reason of Keenan Allen. Now, I love Keenan Allen. He's a great football player. He's got that crisp route running. Nobody expected him to do what he's doing right now. Nobody expected him, specifically with the stint with the Bears, to sit there and not only take Ladd McConkey's route tree and fantasy production, but he's doing it at a probably better rate than Ladd McConkey is. Now, I mean, it is Keenan Allen. He's got that experience. He's got that route running, and he's got that rapport with Justin Herbert that, I mean, we forget they played together beforehand, so it shouldn't be a surprise. So right now I am looking at the trade market for players that were traded, and I'm going to be talking about specific trades that went down for those players, and we're going to talk about which side we would rather be when trading that player, and if we would make that trade, or what should we do in that scenario, because sometimes the return is so diminished that there's just no point in trading it because it's just not worth it at that point. There's no value in it. And sometimes you should trade that player because his value just might go lower. If the situation doesn't get any better, or there isn't a path to have a better situation, then there's no point in sitting there, starting a player you know is not in a position to succeed and then getting upset when he doesn't succeed. I mean, that's just insanity at that case. You're putting a player in the same position and getting upset that you're getting the same results. You can't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Don't stress yourself out that way. So we're going to start off with Ladd McConkey. We're going to look at specific trades that went down for him, and we're going to talk about, okay, would we do that in this case? Like, for example, right now, Ladd McConkey, he went 1-for-1 for Jordan Mason. Now, this is September 23rd of when these trades went down. Specifically, these trades went down September 23rd. The only issue is that we don't know the format of the league. It could be full point, half point, standard, super flex and all that stuff. We are just going to give it the assumption that it is half point PPR. So we have a basis of understanding of, okay, where would we want to go in this situation? So Ladd McConkey went 1-for-1 for Jordan Mason. Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one. And I'm going with these trades live with you guys. So I'm going to think of the player. We're going to type it in the trade market and we're going to see the trades that went down and we're going to break it down together, because if I pre-rehearse this, then it's not as fun and you don't get the live reaction and the thought process of would I do something. So you know what, looking at this live with you guys and for the first time allows me to get a more genuine response and a thought process of, okay, would I want to do something or not? And all that was basically me stalling, trying to think of an answer of would I want Ladd McConkey or Jordan Mason, because Jordan Mason, he's going to prove RB1 numbers until Aaron Jones gets back. Now, even when Aaron Jones gets back, the situation is not going to be the same because one, Aaron Jones, he just gets hurt all the time. Like there's death taxes and Aaron Jones hurting his hamstring. It's just like Chris Olave with concussions, just like Christian Watson with his hamstring, just like with Mike Evans getting 1,000-yard season. There's death taxes and something specific happening, and it is going to be with Aaron Jones hurting himself. It's going to happen again. There's no way he's going to go throughout the whole year without hurting his soft tissue, hamstring. It's going to happen again. Now, with Jordan Mason specifically and Ladd McConkey, I am not too afraid of Ladd McConkey because that offense for the Chargers is so efficient that at some point he's going to eat. Now, we have the resurgence of Quentin Johnson. We have Keenan Allen, who's doing really well. So they got 3 upper echelon wide receivers on that team that needs to get fed. Realistically, you just can't feed 3 wide receivers because they don't pass the ball enough to be able to efficiently feed 3 wide receivers. And you would think Ladd McConkey being the intermediate, short, kind of shifty guy on the field, a little Wes Welker type of player, Julian Edelman type of player, that he would get a lot of PPR receptions. But that's just not necessarily the case of right now. You know, he's giving you fantasy points. He's not dropping donuts on you, but he's not giving you the production that you want. I mean, 4 receptions, 41 yards, 5 reception, 48 yards, 6 receptions, 74 yards. You know, they're not bad performances. You know, he's averaging 54 yards a game. It's not what we expected, and it's not the ADP value that we drafted him for, which is why it is such a disappointment in him. Now, all that being said, I think I'd rather have Jordan Mason in this case. You know what? Having RB1 potential for Jordan Mason, it's kind of nice right now. You know, against the Bengals, he had 16 carries, 2 touchdowns, 116 yards. Now, the Bengals defense is Swiss cheese right now. Nobody's denying that. Against the Bears, we had 15 carries, he had 68 yards, 1 shy away from a really nice number. Against the Falcons, 9 carries, 30 yards. I mean, these are all modest games other than the Cincinnati. That one got out of hand really fast. And you know what? That's almost an outlier in this case. But in this one, you know what? You can't go wrong with either one. This is one of those trades where I feel like it's an even trade. I would, I want to say Jordan Mason, but a little bit of me really wants Ladd McConkey too. I do like Ladd McConkey, so it hurts. But I think I'd rather have Jordan Mason in this situation. Expecting a quarterback, Justin Herbert, to be able to properly feed 3 wide receivers is a tall order to be able to consistently do. So the fact that he's getting 5 catches, 50 yards, honestly, that sounds realistic at this point. You know what? That seems like a solid spot of where he is, considering the situation that he is in. It's just a tough ask. The scheme's there, and it's consistent that he's getting 5 catches, 50 yards. That quite literally is his average. And the fact that he's doing it almost every single game tells you, hey, that is what he is this year. Don't expect anything more. Don't expect anything less. Maybe he gets a touchdown, but that seems like the overall value of Ladd McConkey. You want him, expect 5 catches, 50 yards. If it's full point PPR, congratulations. It's like 10 fantasy points. That's his floor. But there's not much more than that because, okay, say he gets a touchdown. All right, 6 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. That's still like 17 fantasy points. Like, yeah, that's really good, but that's what you expected out of Ladd McConkey every game when you drafted him in the 3rd round or whatever round it was. You know, you expected 10 catches, 70 yards, and potentially a touchdown. 7 catches, 70 yards, 4-point PPR. Just off that, that's like 17 points. Add a touchdown, and then you know what? He makes your week. But right now, 10 fantasy points isn't making your week. It's just not dropping a donut in this case. Jordan Mason, he won people weeks last week with 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's what? Just off yards, 16 fantasy. And that's not 16, 11 fantasy points, 2 touchdowns, 12, 23 fantasy points. I don't even know how I had any receptions. But if he did, then, it's just icing on the cake at that point. He carried people specifically because he was a handcuff. So you drafted him not only at the 10th, 9th, 11th round, but you still had the ability to put your starters in and then, of course, double up on fantasy points. Sad news. In one league, I went against Jordan Mason and the Vikings defense. Sad to say, I did not win that week. So in this case, I would rather want Jordan Mason. That was a lot to go over, but Jordan Mason is going to be the guy that I want because he gives me the higher potential of winning a fantasy football week. Other trades that went down with Ladd McConkey, I'm trying to go with 1-for-1s. If it's like a 2 for 2, 2 for 2, 1 for 2, that makes it a lot more stickier of a situation. I'm trying to stick to 1-for-1 type of player. So Ladd McConkey and DeAndre Swift. This one's a little bit more interesting. I think I'd rather want Ladd McConkey. DeAndre Swift, he's averaging 50 rushing yards a game. That's not good. Against the game at Dallas, who has a Swiss cheese defense, and they absolutely piled it on to the point where they should have been running the ball. He averaged 2.5 yards. Against Detroit, 5.3, not bad. Minnesota, tough defense. I'll be fair, tough defense. 3.1, not ideal. He's averaging like 14 yards a carry, 14 touches a game at 50 yards. That's not going to do it for me. Like, you know what? He was drafted in the later end. So, you know what? That was his ask. Like, when you drafted him in the 8th round, you know what? He's doing what you asked of him. But Ladd McConkey is not doing what you asked of him. He's performing, just not at that specific level. They are both performing at this point the same because they're both getting 50 yards. The difference is I believe Swift has at least a touchdown. He has a touchdown. Ladd McConkey does not. Therefore, at this point, I would probably want DeAndre Swift. Now, I personally believe in Ladd McConkey more, but you need fantasy production at this point. And when they're evaluated and performing the exact same, they are performing the exact same. They are both averaging 50 yards a game. You might as well go with the running back because it is harder to fill the running back holes. You can find anybody on the waiver wire right now that is getting you, 5 catches, 50 yards. Any of them on the waiver wire, any wide receiver too on the waiver wire will get you that. I mean, there is a reason why the scheme is so important. I mean, Thompson, the Chiefs wide receiver, sorry, I forgot his name, Thompson. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember his name anymore. But he was run away from the Patriots. He was run off the Patriots team. I didn't even know he was still in the NFL. And all of a sudden, he is one of the waiver wire pickups of the week for the Chiefs. That just goes to show it doesn't matter how good you are. If you fit the scheme on the team that they're trying to perform, you will be fantasy productive. It's A plus B scenario. It's not oh, he's fast or he's tall, he's big. Oh, he has the ability to out talent everybody. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how talented you are as an NFL player. If you are not in a situation to succeed, you are not going to succeed. Think of it this way. A handful of years ago, you know what? I need to pull up their draft class. I'm going to do that right now. A handful of years ago, Amon-Ra St. Brown is draft class for rookie drafts. I got in a lot of arguments with this. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to type this on the computer. Amon-Ra St. Brown draft class. Because I believe this is the same draft class with Jalen Waddle. Oh, shoot, now I need to look up the wide receivers. Wide receivers list. Because I know I should have just asked him because I know he has the same list. He has it written down. So, okay, I'm going to read you guys the list of people drafted before Amon-Ra St. Brown and then stuff in the rookie draft. Like, okay, of course, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, Rondo Moore, Tutu Atwell, Terrence Marshall Jr., Josh Palmer, Diami Brown, Amari Rogers, Nico Collins, and all that stuff. All right, we'll stop there. During the rookie draft, a lot of people were telling you to take Jalen Waddle, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman, and Elijah Moore all over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know that for a fact because I was arguing with people over the previous pods. This is of course, 4 years ago. But I was taking Amon-Ra St. Brown because he was going on the Lions. There was no competition for Amon-Ra St. Brown on the Lions. No competition whatsoever. You can't even name the wide receivers on the Lions 4 years ago. Kenny Golladay just left that team. So you can't even name him. He was gone off that team at that time. So in the 2021 draft, there was no competition for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was automatically elevated wide receiver 1. He was in a position to succeed. Not only was he the number 1 bona fide star receiver on that team, he had now Jared Goff as a quarterback. Jared Goff, I know at the time he had his resurgence, and now he's considered a fringe top 10 quarterback. But when he was on the Rams, he was supporting 3 wide receiver 1s. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and there was one more. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so mad I can't remember his name. I am so mad I can't remember his name. He was drafted by the Saints. He got traded to the Patriots. Then he went to the Rams. Oh my God. Brandon Cooks. That's his name. Brandon Cooks. There we go. So they had 3 wide receivers on that team. And I don't know if you guys remember, but they all had 3rd to 4th round ADPs in redraft leagues. They were all taken in the 3rd and 4th round. And which was unheard of. You had 3 wide receiver 1s on one team, all taken in the top 4 rounds, specifically the 3rd and 4th. Nobody had an issue with it because they were all eating. They were all getting fed. That's how efficient the Rams offense was at the time. Now, that's completely different from the Chargers offense. They're all, the Chargers offense is efficient and good, but not enough to specifically feed 3 wide receiver ones like the Rams did at the time. And they still had Todd Gurley. He was still eating too. But anyway, Jared Goff is now the wide receiver on that team. So if he could feed 3 wide receivers on one team, I don't care if the team is horribly wrong. They were building on offensive line. They had got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got Jared Goff. They were in a weaker division at the time. They were always going to have a negative game script. He was put in a position to succeed. I'm talking about Amon-Ra. He was going to put up fantasy points, regardless of how good the system was around him, specifically because he was set up in a position to succeed. And it's no surprise he succeeded while every other wide receiver that was drafted previously before him. I shouldn't say every single one, like Jamar Chase is on the list, Devontae, Jalen Waddle, and all that stuff, Nico Collins. But they all did not. Specifically, Rashad Bateman. Yes, Rashad Bateman has a little bit of a niche in the Ravens offense now, but it is not a fantasy relevant niche. It's one of those, he's a decent fit for the Ravens, but not a decent fit for fantasy football. And it took him how many years? It took him 4 years to get to this point. When you're on a run-first offense, with Lamar Jackson being I would say I'd give him an above-average passer in the pocket, but it's still questionable at times. It doesn't make for a good fantasy football. Elijah Moore on the Jets, he had no chance of becoming fantasy relevant, even though him as a talent I thought was great, and I wanted to believe in his talent over the scheme. It wasn't happening with him. Jalen Waddle is right now struggling with the quarterback scheme that's going around him. If the quarterback play isn't up to his level, then he can't put up fantasy football points. That's just the unfortunate truth. Rondell Moore on the Cardinals, he didn't fit that scheme at all. Good talent, didn't fit the scheme. He got ran out. I don't even know if he's on the team anymore. Tutu Atwell. Unfortunately, he got depth chart buried because they still had the 3 wide receivers. They had Cooper Kupp, and then Puka Nacua overtook him. He had no chance of making a starting roster, even though he was put on a good team that knew how to deal with wide receivers. He had maybe 1 or 2 weeks where he was fantasy relevant when everybody got hurt, but as soon as everybody got back, he was gone, kicked off. Terrence Marshall Jr., no chance. Terrible. He's on the Panthers. You had no chance of being fantasy productive. Diami Brown didn't have a chance to be. Josh Palmer, no chance. Dwayne Eskridge, I don't even know who that is. Kadarius Toney, he had talent. He had an attitude issue, and he was on the Giants. Not going to happen. You're just not going to be fantasy productive at that point. So, again, that's another reason why scheme fit matters over talent. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You in a position to succeed, you succeed. You're not, you're not. That's just how it is. I don't want to hear anybody talk about he who must not be named. God, I'm going to be mad I'm not mad. I don't remember him. He's so bad. He was drafted on the Panthers. God, Laviska Shenault. There we go. I don't even want to talk about Laviska Shenault. But anyway, we're gonna digress and we're gonna move on back to our trade talk. That was my monologue of the day. There's probably going to be more as we go on. But DeAndre Swift is who I'd probably take in this case, because if you have 2 equal productive players, you want the running back because it is harder to fill the roles of the running back than it is the wide receiver. So, of course, you know what? In this case, I'm going to take DeAndre Swift. Now, Ladd McConkey and Emeka Egbuka. I'm taking Egbuka. Not only is he a perfect scheme fit for the Buccaneers, but the way Baker Mayfield's playing right now, you want a piece of that offense. Sterling Shepard right now. I don't like what's he doing in the NFL? I'd still take him over right now, Ladd McConkey, in the situation that he's going to be thrusted into. Mike Evans with the hamstring injury, soft tissue injury. If we don't believe Aaron Jones Sr. is going to come back full strength, then you know what? We have to apply that same logic to Mike Evans. And soft tissue injuries, it's always going to linger. And if he's not getting put on the IR, that means they're probably going to thrust him back in early, and it's just not going to be a good thing. It's just not going to be a good thing. And Mike Evans has had issues with his hamstring previously in his career. It's been a reoccurring issue. Usually you start him, he gets you 1,000 yards, but there's always the every week, okay, how's his hamstring going on right now? It's a little bit stressful to own. But in this case, Egbuka, he's the guy to own right now. He is thriving. He is rookie of the year type player. I don't see anybody else potentially taking that over him. But anyway, Ladd McConkey to George Pickens, and then we'll move on. And this one, I'm taking George Pickens. Same thing. He is now thrusted wide receiver 1 role. They're both wide receiver 2s on that team right now. They're both wide receiver 2s. because right now I'm going to say Quentin Johnson. He's the wide receiver one of that team. And of course, CD Lamb is the wide receiver one for the Dallas. At this case, you want George Pickens because he is more fantasy productive with a higher ceiling and the same floor. Like, they have the same floor because Ladd McConkey has provided that floor of 50 yards, but he still has the higher ceiling. Like, actually, they both average 55 yards a game. The difference is Pickens has 2 touchdowns. So in that case, give me George Pickens. And now with CD Lamb hurt, that only elevates your reasoning for that. You don't expect him to have very many wins. You expect him to have negative game scripts. You expect them to be losing a lot. They have a bad defense. They're going to have to air it out. All favors George Pickens. When you have a team with a stout defense like the Chargers do, within a stout run game, with a running back that's elevating himself right now, they're going to want to run the ball. And you know what? That seems to be the Charger style. They want to run, play action pass, take their shots down deep. And of course, Quentin Johnson has filled that hole perfectly. And if they want to move the chains and have a possession receiver, well, unfortunately, they got Keenan Allen for you. Ladd McConkey is in an odd spot where he doesn't fit the role that he's being asked to perform, which is being like an intermediate type of guy. He's just not fitting it right now in that scheme because they just have too many options. So George Pickens is going to be is going to be who I would pick in that scenario. Now let's move on to running back. We're just going to actually go to Ashton Jeanty. Let's see if I spell his name right. Jeanty. Actually, I did not. I don't even know how to do it. Ashton. Let's try that one. There we go. So he is the same thing. He is on average, he will get hit before he crosses the line of scrimmage. Unfortunately, I worded that poorly, but when he receives the care, he is more likely to get hit before he crosses the line of scrimmage than after he gets the line of scrimmage. That's how bad not only is the offensive line, but the scheme around it is. Everybody knows when he's on the field, he's getting the ball because he's not necessarily there on third down situations, in pass down situations, because he's not a very good pass protector right now. He's a rookie. It's expected. But he's just that bad that when he's on the field, people have an understanding that, you know what, they're probably going to give him the ball. They give him the stack box. They know Geno Smith isn't going to necessarily torch him through the air. They can afford to play a run first and then, of course, make him one-dimensional and all that good stuff. So Jeanty, he's not getting fed the way we want him to, and his fantasy point is reflecting that. And as somebody that's got taken in the early second round, late first round, he is definitely the disappointment. He has an average of 48 yards per game. He's got 1 rushing touchdown, which was, I believe, week 1 against the Patriots. But of course, week 2 against the Chargers, you're not expecting him to do too much. Against the Commanders, I expect you to do a little bit more. 17 carries, 63 yards, 3.7 yards per game. Not going to count it. It's not going to cut it for somebody that drafted in the early second, late first round. Not going to work for me. So you ask yourself, okay, how does the situation get better? 1, they have to get more coherent on the offensive line. 2, the pass game has to elevate so that it softens up the run for them. Now, I believe that Geno Smith is capable because he's done it before, specifically for the Seahawks. He has made it so. Sorry, I can't remember his name. Running back on the Seahawks. Come on, help me out here. Help me out, people. Help me out here. Oh, my God. I am so mad at myself. Seahawks RB. Oh my God. Kenneth Walker. There we go. So Kenneth Walker, he's made Kenneth Walker fantasy productive, and Kenneth Walker has been fantasy productive. So it's not like Geno Smith is unable to clear the box enough for a running back. He's done it. Then he needs a better offensive line to open up holes to be able for him to move past the line of scrimmage at the very least, because I mean, at that point, it's just an offensive line skill issue. So we're going to look at the trades that went down with Ashton Jeanty, and we're going to look specifically for the one-on-ones. So Ashton Jeanty went 1-for-1 for Garrett Wilson. Now, of course, I'm going to assume this is half-point PPR. In this case, I hate Garrett Wilson. And in the games with Garrett Wilson, he's averaging right now, surprisingly, a decent amount. He's averaging 67 yards or 76 yards a game. Now, that's going to be elevated from the Pittsburgh game where Justin Fields played great. And then, of course, they went to the Buffalo where Justin Fields played horrendous. And now Tampa Bay where, you know what, they bought the backup in, Tyrod Taylor, and he did his thing. So 10 receptions, 1 touchdown, 84 yards against Tampa Bay, and we expect him to play again this week. So you know what? In this case, Garrett Wilson is going to be the guy that you're going to want in this situation. Garrett Wilson had a little bit of a lower ADP because we kind of were skeptical on the offense that the Jets ran. I still am skeptical on the longevity of it. I don't think you can do all year with it. But if Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback, I'm a little bit happier with the situation they are now currently in. Now, Garrett Wilson doesn't even have any competition around him, so he is in a position to succeed. If they play half defense, half decent on offense, he will be fantasy productive. Now, if Justin Fields come back, then you know what? My optimism drops significantly in that case. But right now, I am very optimistic on Garrett Wilson. Genty, on the other hand, still not as optimistic. Still not as optimistic on the boy Ashton Genty. Now, in this case, his value has been hit so low that it is difficult for you to trade him because, again, it's just at a car dealership. You drove the car out a lot. It's not worth anything anymore. One more trade, Chuba Hubbard. In this case, God, that hurts to say. It hurts to say, oh, Chuba Hubbard is the guy that you're looking at. Oh, my God, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts. Cortland Sutton, 1-for-1 for Ashton Genty. Man, that's an F in the chat type of moment. So it's like, what do you want in this situation? In this case, you kind of have to hold Ashton Genty because what are you going to do? Like, you can take your lumps. You could just cut your losses and get rid of him. But in this case, I don't think it's a good idea to do so. I would rather you keep Genty and hope they fix the situation that they're currently in. Now, I don't necessarily see it get better. I do expect the running back to get some feet under him, to get a grasp on the game, to let it slow down a little bit, let him get an understanding of what the offense is trying to doing and how to properly hit the holes, how to move on and all that stuff. But oh man, it's disappointing. And to be honest, usually historically, rookie running backs, they do very well when they're the bell cow straight out of college. So of course, there wasn't too much of a like skepticism with Genty. Usually it was pretty a consensus that, hey, you know what, this guy, when he plays, he's going to be fantasy productive. So in this case, Genty, I'm holding. You're not going to get the value that you drafted him for. Like Ladd McConkey, you could still hold him and start him. And while it's not going to be what you wanted, it's not going to drop you a donut. He won't be the reason why you lost your week. How about that? Like Ladd McConkey, you don't lose your week because of him, but he doesn't help you win. In that case, unless you are able to get specific value, like getting like we talked about with the running backs earlier, I'd probably want to keep Ladd McConkey. Same with Genty. Now, we're going to talk about Alvin Kamara for a second. Now, I don't think anybody really expected Alvin Kamara to be this, oh my God, fantasy productive workhorse that he once was early in his career. That being said, 62 rushing yards a game, not bad. You can't complain too much about that. His receptions are a little bit lower. Against the San Francisco 49ers, he had 6 receptions on 6 targets. It doesn't matter if you get yards at that point. You got your PPR points. But against Seattle and Arizona, he just had 2 targets. That's not going to cut it for him. He needs more, especially with an offense that's struggling the way it is. I mean, they didn't put up 13 points against Seattle until garbage time. Arizona 13. The Niners, surprisingly, they were able to put up 21. But Kamara had a good game that time. He had 21 rushes for 99 yards. Like, he put up his fantasy production. Now, Alvin Kamara, I was a little bit skeptical putting him on the list because he didn't have the highest ADP. So right now he is hitting his ADP. He is hitting his projection and doing exactly what you drafted him for. Those 99-yard games, those 6 reception games, that's overproducing realistically when you think about it. And because of that, you know what? He is somebody that you might want to look at selling high when you see somebody that had James Conner, didn't have Benson, who's maybe lacking in the running game or the running back team. He's probably somebody you want to shop around and see like, hey, is somebody willing to overpay a little bit for him? Is somebody seeing those 3 weeks and seeing the consistency and seeing that 99-yard game with 6 catches and thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe I want a piece of that. Realistically, you can use Alvin Kamara to take one of those buy low type of players. Like, for example, we're going to talk about him in a second, but right now, Alvin Kamara went 1-for-1 with Chase Brown, the homie Breezy. Because of that, he's the type of person that I would want to take a sell high and take a buy low. And Chase Brown is this perfect example because he is, realistically, if you think about it, he is in the situation you would want your player to be in. A quarterback that's hurt, They need the backup quarterback to check it down, play safe. The offensive line is weak. They're unable to run the ball. Well, they should have an extension of the run game by giving those little screen passes, dump offs, check down opportunities to the flats, angle routes. Get creative with him to make sure he's getting the ball in space. Over, go over the line of scrimmage. Don't go through the line of scrimmage. Go over the line of scrimmage. That way you don't have to worry about a bad offensive line. Tires them out, makes it so they can't just straight run the pass or straight rush the passer and all that stuff. But you know what? I'm going to chalk last week's Minnesota game up as they just got destroyed. You know what? Sometimes they just got your number. Any given Sunday is a thing. And that given Sunday, the Vikings, they came out to play. The Bengals did not. I'm chalking that up as let's just put it off to the side and move on. Chase Brown is a guy you want on your starting roster because he is going to get you the receptions and those red zone targets to put the ball in the end zone and get you fantasy point production. That being said, it hurts to see his trade value. His trade value has plummeted. And honestly, this is a good thing because this is somebody you're going to be wanting targeting. Now, of course, everybody and their mama is going to be saying, hey, buy low on Chase Brown, buy low on Chase Brown, buy low on Breezy. That being said, looking at the trade market for him, he did go in a league 1-for-1 with Tyreek Hill. In this case, give me Chase Brown. I don't want Tyreek Hill. I want Chase Brown. He went 1-for-1 with Travis Etienne. Okay. All right. Travis, that was definitely a sell high for Travis. That was a perfect example of a guy's probably overproducing right now. Let's sell him high, get a buy low candidate. And I guess, and you already know by the end of the year, they're going to be incredibly glad that they made that trade for Chase Brown. Another one that went down 1-for-1, Marvin Harrison Jr. Ooh, we'll talk about Marvin Harrison in a bit. Those are two buy lows to buy low. Like both of them were like, all right, hey, we're unhappy with our player. Let's just swap them and see what happens. Honestly, I respect it. I'd still want Chase Brown in this situation, but you know what? Go for it at that point. Chase Brown, 1-for-1 for Drake London. I don't want any shares of Drake London. In the beginning of the year, I told everybody, don't take Drake London. Don't do it to yourself. Like that offense, inept. That quarterback, inept. Nobody really listened. Everybody saw those last two games at the end of the season where Drake London got peppered for targets. But you have to remember, end of the year stuff when the team's tanking, it's different. The schemes are different. The way teams prepare is different. The teams you go against are different. And it's a new year, new scheme, a new system, and a new opponents that you're going against. And right now, there's a stat that Penix has not won a game if the opponent has scored more than 7 points. Like you're telling me, if they score a touchdown right now on the D, if the opposing team scores a touchdown, there is a 0% chance that the Falcons win. That's horrendous as a quarterback, and that's one of the scheme things that you talk about because they do have a decent offensive line. They do have a decent scheme. Because they have a productive running back. They don't have a competent quarterback. And that's the only issue is if the quarterback can't get you the ball, you can't get fantasy points, specifically as a wide receiver. So that becomes a scheme issue where, of course, I'm using an umbrella phrase here, but if the scheme does not fit, then the players will not be productive. And it doesn't matter. Drake London, if he's a talented player or not, don't care. The scheme doesn't work. Don't draft him. He's in the umbrella of the Jaguars, for example. They, like for all purposes, like you would expect Brian Thomas Jr. to be productive. He doesn't have competition around him in the wide receiver position. Like, oh, congratulations. They have Travis Hunter. Yeah, he's on the field half the time, mostly on defense. He is the wide receiver one on that team. You have a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence, well, I have my personal thoughts on him. He is a more than capable quarterback to be fantasy relevant. And because of that, it is to me crazy that they are unable to make Brian Thomas Jr. a relevant fantasy wide receiver. And he doesn't have the best hands. He had some drops. The team doesn't have the best wide receiver. So you would expect him to be a relevant fantasy football wide receiver. But unfortunately, he's also another underperforming one. Now, he is one that you can't do anything with, which is why I didn't necessarily put him on the list. Like, you can't trade him. His value is nothing. Like, do you want a handcuff? I'll trade a handcuff for. Actually, you know what? I might want a handcuff in this case. You know what? Like, if you were to offer me Brian Thomas Jr. for like Brian Robinson Jr. on the handcuff for the 49ers, give me the handcuff. Give me the. I don't want Brian Robinson Jr. Give me the handcuff. But you know, if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, he is top 5 RB. And Brian Robinson Jr. has no chance of becoming a top 5 wide receiver. No chance of being a top 5 wide receiver unless they get another quarterback. For some reason, Mac Jones and Brian Thomas Jr. wide receiver 1 combination. Trevor Lawrence, wide receiver 34 combination. And that's what we're seeing out of him. But Marvin Harrison Jr., he's probably going to be the next wide we're talking about. He's also the issue where the scheme fit from the coaching and the offensive perspective doesn't fit. Now, he's had some bad drops. He had 2 really bad drops against the 49ers. One so bad, Fred Warner came up here. He tried to pick him up. He tried to say, hey, man, come on, dude. Like, you got this. The next one. Like, you know, sometimes where you're kind of so I play a lot of Madden. And sometimes I'll just be dogging on a player because I do play at a semi-professional level. Sometimes I'll be dogging on a random online opponent to the point where I feel bad. Where I'm like, all right, you know what? Instead of doing my usual scheme on offense, I'm going to like go under center and just try to do like double passes and stuff like, you know, I'll mess around a little bit on the offense. I'll do something completely different than what I typically do because I feel so bad for the opponent. And that was what happened with Marvin Harrison Jr. to the point where the Niners, I felt bad for him. I don't even like the guy. They felt bad for him. And because of that, you could tell he's in his head, and he had 2 drops because, you know, we saw all highlights of the one where Fred Warner kind of came, put his hands behind his back and just kind of danced around. He damn near Fortnite danced around him. It emoted. He emoted on Marvin Harrison Jr. But there was another one in the end zone where it bounced off his helmet. Now it got kind of, I believe it was, there was a penalty on it. So they went, I believe, to the 1 yard line, if I remember correctly. So like it overshadowed the fact that he dropped it and it hit him in the face, but it did hit him in the face. He should have put up another touchdown on that game, minus or plus whatever he should have had on that drop in the middle of the field. Because, you know, if he caught that ball, it's a race to the end zone at that point, and he's probably winning that race. So he should have had a massive day, which is why I'm not as down as on Marvin Harrison Jr. because, again, he is in a position to succeed. He doesn't have a wide receiver to really take away the targets other than their tight end. The tight end is the wide receiver 2 in this case. Well, you know what? Realistically, if you think about it, it might be flipped. Marvin Harrison might be the wide receiver 2, and the tight end might be the receiving option number 1 in this scenario. But now with the running back, James Conner, out for the year, they might be forced to pass it a little more because I don't believe Benson is nearly as good as James Conner. I was one of those guys that was really high on James Conner. I really like him as a talent. He's just a big bulldozer. Give him the ball, let him bulldoze his way down the field, and he's knocking pins down for quick strike 10 yards. Benson's not going to be that type of guy. I think they're going to have to air it out a little bit more. Marvin Harrison should be a beneficiary of that change in scheme. That being said, he is in a situation to succeed. The coaching staff isn't incompetent on that team. I have my personal reservations on Kyler Murray. Call of Duty isn't out yet, so he should be fine right now. Marvin Harrison is a guy that I'm still confidently putting in my starting lineup and expecting him to produce fantasy football points. And honestly, he's done that. He hasn't had like a dud game. He's had his disappointments. Like, for example, against Carolina, 2 catches, 27 yards. But I mean, first game of the year against New Orleans, 71 and a touchdown. Against the Niners, 3 for 44. It should have been 5 for 110, but it be what it be sometimes. Sometimes it's just not your day. But those are going to be what I'm talking about. When you're talking about buy low, you're looking at the situation that they're in. Okay, is the situation really that bad? Or was it a couple of unlucky rubber ducky moments? And for somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr., Chase Brown, I just chalk it up as unlucky rubber ducky. With somebody like Ladd McConkey, it's like, okay, what needs to happen? An injury needs to happen, honestly. Like that is your. That being said, Keenan Allen does get injured a lot, but an injury needs to happen for Ladd McConkey to become fantasy relevant in the way that he was last year. With Chase Brown, it was unlucky rubber ducky, and because of that, I'm more than confident keeping him in my starting lineup. Ashton Genty, what do you need for him to be fantasy productive? You need his team around him to elevate. Now, he could play better in different categories in the mental game, but the actual physical on field, he has what it takes. You see him, he's trucking people, he's making people miss because he's averaging getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, yet he's still getting positive yards. So he's making people miss, he's breaking tackles, and he's doing what he does. The team around him needs to elevate to his level to give him the opportunity to be fantasy productive. Now, do you expect the team to elevate around him? No, it's the Raiders. Come on. It's the Raiders. Come on. Like, they're in a really tough division. They got the Chiefs, Chargers, and the Broncos. Like, it's a tough division. I don't expect him to elevate. In that case, hold him. Maybe he has a couple good games, and then he figures it out from there. He's able to get momentum going. But trading him in this aspect means you're not getting anywhere near returns. You're getting diminished returns on your asset. It's like, in the stock game, buy high, sell low. You know what they say, right? That's my stock portfolio anyway. But that's going to be the stuff that you're looking at when you are dealing with your underperforming players. You ask yourself, what's the situation here? What do they got to do to get better? Why are they underperforming? Is it possible for them to turn it around? Is it realistic for them to turn it around? Because just do what I did, because this is what I do. I put myself in the situation, in the scenario of the players, like we did in the beginning of the show. We put ourselves in Jamar Chase's head, and we went through the scenario of how what needs to happen for him to be fantasy relevant. And in this case, you could apply that to any player on the team. Like, okay, is he the bona fide wide receiver one? All right, are they calling plays for him? Okay, can the offensive line protect? Can the quarterback get in the ball? Do you expect that realistically throughout the game? Okay, are they going to be winning games? Are they going to be losing games? They got negative game scripts. How's the team they're looking at? I know that, so on and so forth. There's so many things that you could look at. You could just look at player talent, but all that is going to do is going to lead you to a losing season. Like Marvin Harrison, he's a good player, not performing. Chase Brown's a good player, he's not performing. Ashton Genty, I mean, they were hailing him as a generational player, not performing. Drake London was 102 in the draft. What was he? It was top 5. Like, I don't even remember where he was. Drake London, he was top 5, I believe. Drake London draft talk. Drake London draft. I mean, you know what? Jokes aside, actually, this is another joke. Like, his name is London. Like, what has ever came good from London? Like, England. Like, what in the world has ever come from England that's good? Like, we dumped their tea in the harbor. Like, we disrespect, like, they dropped off tea and we disrespected them by emoting and by dropping it in the harbor. Like, they would have lost World War II if it wasn't for us. World War I if it wasn't for us. We destroyed them in the Revolutionary War. We took the average farmers and we wrecked them. Like, they're nothing without us. England is nothing without the US. And you want somebody named London to be fantasy football productive in America's game? Sorry, baseball. In America's game, you want somebody named London to be? It's not happening. It's not happening. Like, come on. Be realistic with me, guys. Be realistic with me. Yeah, he was pick 8 overall, top 10 pick. So, I mean, he came in the league with talent, clearly. But hey, if the situation, you got to have the quarterback, got to have that situation. And that's why people are drafting T. Higgins so high. It's like, you have the situation for him to be fantasy productive. Like, you have Joe Burrow, you had Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is 101, and the wide receiver 2 was still taken in the late second, early third round. Like, that just goes to show you like how good the situation was for the Bengals with Joe Burrow as quarterback. You had an upper echelon quarterback, top 3 quarterback sitting there for you to be able to properly facilitate the football. And because of that, he goes drafted that high. Now with backup in, we don't know. The situation gets worse because Joe Burrow masked a lot of the offensive line issues that the team had. Counting, he can't really do that. Counting. Oh shoot! Now I need to look. Bengals QB. Jake Browning. Sorry, God, that was terrible. Jake Browning. He can't necessarily mask the offensive line issues that Joe Burrow was able to do, making it so it was glaringly obvious against the Vikings. Now, again, it is the Vikings defense. They are a legit defense. They are a ferocious defense. So that's why I'm willing to chalk it up as okay, let's move on to the side. Let's just wipe it past the memory. We'll take the L and move on to the next week. But that's going to be the situation on how you want to evaluate the trade market. Again, to reiterate everything, when you are looking at the buy low players, put yourself in their position and ask yourself, what do they need to do to be fantasy relevant? And if it's a laundry list, all right, it's time to take your lumps and move on from that player. But if there's a realistic path to relevancy, You're going to want to keep that player, put him in your starting lineup, and then, of course, hope the team is able to figure it out and make your fantasy team productive. But other than that, hey, if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed my monologues and yapping, hey, make sure to share, subscribe, and be ready for next week's episode, because eventually we're going to start talking about starts and sits, waiver wires, and all that good stuff, and going really in depth in the fantasy league. But other than that, good luck, everybody.